In today's video, I'm going to talk about why Linux will not replace Windows anytime soon. By the way, before you start bashing me, I'm a Linux user. I use Fedora, and for consumers, Linux is not a good operating system for most consumers. Why? Because it's too difficult to use. First, let's talk about hardware. For personal computing, Windows dominates, and in Mac OS, they make their own hardware and software, so there's no compatibility issue. For vendors like Dell, Lenovo, HP, when they sell computers, they pre-install Windows, so there's no hardware compatibility issue. If you want to install Linux for desktop, of course, all my desktops I built myself. But for laptops, I have to buy from Lenovo. I use Lenovo ThinkPad Carbon series exclusively. My whole family actually use, including my 80-year-old daughter. We all use the same line product because it's really high quality. But for laptops, we have to buy a laptop with the Windows installed and then dual boot, because even modern laptop you can put two hard drives, so we dual boot Linux. Because the software and hardware are not together, you have to install the hardware later. There's a risk that the Linux driver is not there. Some new hardware like the Wi-Fi card, you install Linux, the Wi-Fi card won't work. For a laptop, that's death penalty. You've got a laptop without internet. This didn't happen to me, to my Lenovo ThinkPad Carbon X1 Generation 2. Because the Wi-Fi card is so new, I installed Ubuntu 19.4, no Wi-Fi. I had to reinstall Ubuntu 19.10, the beta version, with a newer kernel with Wi-Fi cards adapters driver program. So that's a big bummer. You think about it, somebody who's not very technical, what he's going to do? He installed Linux on his laptop. There's no Wi-Fi. So Linux is not as smooth as Windows. There are a lot of issues. Of course, as the number of people using Linux grow, more and more people start to use Linux for personal computing. I'm sure the hardware vendors will take notice, will make driver programs for Linux. But at least for now, because Windows dominates, there will still be hardware where there's no Linux driver. My laptop's fingerprint reader does not have Linux driver, so I can't use it. Okay, that's hardware. Now let's talk about software. I think Linux as an operating system is superior to Windows, but here's a but. Because it's open source, there are all these crazy projects. There's Ubuntu, there's Fedora, there's all these distros. It's extremely confusing, and all those fancy desktop environment stuff, they serve little purpose. For me, I just need a very simple operating system, desktop environment, file manager, so I can get my job done. I don't give a damn about eye candies. Why do I need those? Linux, there are too many distros, too confusing. It's not very easy. You're going to waste a lot of time trying to figure out things. Hypothetically, if there's just one Linux distro for desktop, say Fedora workstation, things will be much easier for Linux because you don't have to deal with all these package managers like apt for Debian systems. You just use DNF, and all the development resources focusing on this single distro. You just imagine what we can achieve. Yeah, you're going to have a vastly superior operating system than Windows, I can guarantee you, if we put all the brain powers together, the open source community. But unfortunately, there are hundreds of distros. If someone wants to use Linux, they will be confused. They will spend a lot of time just to research which one's right for me, which distro is right for me. That's a pure waste of time. Now let's talk about package managers. That's a huge strength. Free software. You click a button, you can update 40, 50 software in one go. That's huge, much easier than Windows. But hey, can I just get everything done without going to the terminal? For an average user, going to the terminal typing some code is pretty scary, and they can easily screw up because they don't understand about the underlying operating system. If the package manager can offer a nice graphic user interface, every software can be installed or uninstalled with a single click of a button, that's going to be a huge win. Think about Windows. How does Windows install software? You download exe or the installation package, you double click, you're done. Linux needs to offer something similar, no terminal. For an average user, you just need to use your software, use your operating system. You don't have to understand how the intricacies of the operating system. That's just a waste of time to them. So Linux needs to offer the same experience. At present, there's just too many package managers, and the user experience is not smooth. Huge waste of time. Something doesn't work. Huge frustration. And lack of consistency. The Windows, when you install software, it's under program files. For Linux, there are how many directories? USR bin, USR local bin, and also OPT. Too many places to install software, too confusing. So Linux needs to be less confusing. Okay, that's the second aspect. Now, hypothetically, the hardware manufacturers like Dell, Lenovo, they start to ship their hardware with a Linux pre-installed. So this guarantees that hardware will work. And they use just one distro. See, they all use Fedora. And the Linux community now, do you think they're in the same position as Windows? Still not. The applications, too many applications. Some are not very good quality because open source community. I want to do screencasting. What kind of software should I use? I'm using Vocal Screen, but there are a whole bunch of other stuff. I want to process my photos. What software I should use? A whole bunch of stuff. I'm using raw therapy, but I know there's a doc table or something there. So there's just too many choices, too confusing. Sometimes less is more. Focus on a single project for one purpose, say photo editing. Build a single software. Make it work well. And you're done. We don't need 5-10 different projects to serve the same purpose, right? This is very confusing. So in terms of applications, Linux needs fewer applications that are of high quality. Everybody use the same application for that purpose. For photo editing, everybody use raw therapy. For video editing, everybody use, say, Handbrake. For screencasting, everybody use Vocal Screen. One software for one purpose, then that's golden. You do not have to waste time trying to figure out which one is better than which one. Okay, because all the confusion, the terminal that make people screw up their systems, and also lack of hardware support, Linux, I think in the near future, is in no position to challenge Windows. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.